All right, let's dive into one of the biggest, most mind-bending mysteries of the entire 20th century. We're talking about an event, a blast of incredible, almost unimaginable power that literally came out of a clear blue sky, and it left behind a puzzle that for more than 100 years has had scientists totally stumped. So I want you to picture this. It's a quiet summer morning, June 30th, 1908. We're in a super remote part of Siberia, a huge, sprawling forest that goes on for thousands and thousands of miles. The only people around are local reindeer herders, just going about their day. Everything is completely normal.
And then it happens. Around 7:17 in the morning, the sky just rips open. A streak of blindingly blue light, way brighter than the sun, tears across the horizon. A few seconds later, an explosion, just a deafening, earth-shattering boom, hits with the force of about 15 megatons. We're talking hydrogen bomb territory. The heat flash from this thing was so intense that people felt it hundreds of kilometers away.
What followed was a shockwave that was just apocalyptic. It leveled over 2,000 square kilometers of forest. Instantly. To put that in perspective, that's an area bigger than the city of London today. 80 million trees just snapped and thrown down like they were toothpicks, all pointing away from a single central point. Now, you hear about an explosion that powerful, and you expect one thing, right? A massive crater, a giant hole in the ground. But here's where the mystery really begins. When the first scientific team finally made it to this incredibly remote spot almost 20 years later, they found something that just didn't make any sense. The scene was just weird. You had all the evidence of a massive blast, those millions of trees all knocked over in a perfect radial pattern, and luckily, because it was so remote, no one was officially killed. But then there's the other stuff. For days after the explosion, the skies all over Europe and Asia were glowing, so bright people said you could read a newspaper outside at midnight. Seismographs as far away as Great Britain picked up the shockwave. But at ground zero? Nothing. No crater, no fragments. The weapon was missing.
And that, right there, is the question. It's the absolute heart of this century-long puzzle. If some cosmic object, a meteor, an asteroid, whatever, caused all that destruction, then where is the impact crater? Where are the pieces of the rock that did all this damage? There weren't any.
This is what's known as the Tunguska paradox. It's this total contradiction between what should have happened and what actually did. The expectation? Simple. You get a huge rock from space, you get a huge hole in the ground, and you find pieces of the rock. The reality? You get all the destruction, but it seems like the thing that caused it just vanished into thin air.
So with no body, so to speak, no crater, no meteorite fragments, scientists had to turn into cosmic detectives. They had to start building a case and looking at a list of suspects that could explain what on earth happened that morning. So who's at the top of the list? Well, the prime suspect and the theory that has the most evidence backing it up is something called an airburst. The idea is that an asteroid, or maybe a small comet, probably about the size of a football field, came screaming into Earth's atmosphere at an insane speed.
And this is the key to the whole missing crater thing. As this object is plummeting through our atmosphere, the pressure and heat building up on it are just astronomical. It just can't take it. And so, a few miles up, maybe 5 to 10 kilometers high, it violently explodes, it disintegrates, and it's the superheated shockwave from that explosion that slams into the ground and flattens the forest. The object itself never actually hits the Earth. Now, a close accomplice in this theory is the idea that the object wasn't a rocky asteroid, but a comet. You know, comets are basically these big, dirty snowballs made of ice and dust. An object like that is way more fragile. So when it hits the atmosphere and explodes, it would just completely vaporize. Poof, gone. Which would perfectly explain why we've never found a single fragment. And those glowing skies over Europe, that also fits, because all that ice and dust would have been shot high up into the atmosphere. Of course, with a mystery this big and this weird, you're going to get some more colorful theories. And Tunguska has had its fair share. Over the years, people have blamed everything from a massive underground gas explosion to a mini black hole passing through the Earth. There was even, the inevitable alien spacecraft crash theory. They're fascinating to think about for sure, but they just don't have the hard evidence that the airburst theory does.
So, what does it all mean? Why should we care about this century-old mystery today?
Well, because when you really get down to it, the Tunguska event is more than just a historical puzzle. It's a very real and, frankly, a pretty chilling warning from space.
If you look at where the science is today, the consensus is pretty clear. Most scientists, a huge majority, believe it was an airburst. There's still a healthy debate about whether it was a rocky asteroid or an icy comet, but that core idea of a mid-air explosion is really the only one that checks all the boxes and explains all the weird evidence.
Which naturally brings us to the big one. Could it happen again? And the answer to that is a hard, unequivocal yes. Absolutely. In fact, smaller airbursts happen way more often than you might think. Remember the Chelyabinsk meteor over Russia back in 2013? That was an airburst. It was much, much smaller than Tunguska, but it still shattered windows for miles and injured over 1,000 people. It was a clear reminder that our planet is in a cosmic shooting gallery.
And I think that's the real takeaway here. We have to reframe how we think about this. Tunguska wasn't an attack. It wasn't malicious. It was a random, natural event. And in the grand scheme of things, it was an incredibly close call, a cosmic near miss. If that object had entered the atmosphere just a few hours later, it could have exploded over a major city like St. Petersburg. The devastation is just unthinkable.
So in the end, the Tunguska Enigma really leaves us with this powerful idea. It's just a raw, humbling reminder of our own vulnerability, a testament to the fact that we live in a very powerful, very dynamic, and completely impersonal cosmos. The question isn't just what happened in 1908. The real question is, what are we doing to be ready for the next time?